Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our latest instalment of Agile London. Hope everyone is well, and good to see some returning faces and some new people as well. To introduce myself, my name is Alex Subhan. My name is not Oliver Bernard. That's the company we work for and sort of helps facilitate Agile London. I get called Oliver quite a lot because of the name underneath my picture, but that's the name of the company. So yeah, my name's Alex Subhan. Welcome again to everyone. So we did have 3 speakers booked in for tonight. One at the moment, I think, is having some technical issues. So we're going to go with 2 so far. If I could just a couple of sort of house rules. If I could just ask everyone to remain on mute, that would be greatly appreciated. And could I ask, and I do actively encourage any questions you have for our speakers. We really welcome those, but if I could just ask you to put them into the chat to me privately and very clearly to which speaker you want me to ask them to. I will ask those at the end to both speakers. I like to maintain the fluidity of the event. One, to give our speakers a nice block and a chance to deliver their talk, and 2, for all of you as our audience to hear them and get an opportunity to listen to them speak and answer. So to kick us off tonight, we've got Sage Ayilara. Hope I've pronounced the name correctly there. Sage is a Scrum Master and Coach at FactSet. His talk is Scrum, Achieving Self-Organized Teams. Sage, over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Alex. Oh, always a pleasure, and, again, massive, well done. And thanks again for organizing this sort of event. It's absolutely brilliant, especially during these times that we're dealing with. So yeah, I'm just going to share my screen very quickly. Bear with me and I shall start. So can you confirm that you can see my screen, please?
That's all good. Good to go.
Fantastic. All right, cool. So yeah, like Alex said, my name is Sage Ayilara. I'm a Scrum Master and Coach working with FactSet. FactSet is a big data company, so we deal with everything from market insights to predictive analysis to big data to artificial intelligence, as well as deep learning also. I've had the opportunity to work in FactSet now for about 2 months. Previous to that, I used to work in the recruitment industry. You'll be interested to know, Alex. I used to work in your industry previously. And previous to that also, I used to work with the government. I think I'm very, very humbled to be here, honestly, to share my little experience that I have. And aren't we all learning, isn't it? I think we are all continuously learning during this journey that we are on in Agile, and for me, especially Scrum. So yeah, I'm here to speak about self-organized teams, and I think my own experience of how I've managed to achieve a certain level, acceptable level of self-organized teams. So I think I start with the slide here where I talk about self-organized teams, being teams that really have the autonomy, to choose how best to accomplish their work. So it's about, as we know as Scrum Masters and Agile experts in the field, it's all about empowering teams, and not just empowering teams, but helping teams with guidelines as well. This is how I define self-organization, right? I define self-organization as driverless cars, right? So we all know how the new driverless cars are coming into fruition, right? So in order for driverless cars to be able to drive themselves safely and also efficiently, right? In order for that to happen, there's certain things that need to be in place for those driverless cars to be able to drive themselves. Things like lanes, isn't it? Things like good quality roads, things like signals, at certain points, and all these bits and pieces that I'm talking about right now. This is all what Scrum provides for us. It provides all these things through the values, the empirism, and also the rules and the roles and the responsibilities of the Scrum team members. So yeah, that's my own little definition of self-organized teams, and that's the picture I try to paint with my teams when I start to lead them down this self-organized journey. As we all know, Scrum Masters must lead by example, and I stress the word "must" there. For me, there's no excuse at all. I continuously do self-inventory on myself to make sure that I am being as best an example as I can be in every single thing I do and every action that I take as well. Also, this is how I see Scrum Masters. I see Scrum Masters not as people that come in and do it and have a job to manage Scrum teams. I don't even see Scrum Masters as people who come in to support Scrum teams. I see Scrum Masters as people who come in to drive and encourage teams to adopt a new way of life. I see Scrum as a way of life. I see Scrum as as strong principles and values that you adhere to. Scrum changes not only your personal life, but not only your professional life, but Scrum also changes your personal life as well. That's how strong it is. So Scrum Master's ultimate goal is to be able to get teams to a self-organized layer or level where they are able to automate and operate autonomously as well. So as you see there, my name is Ayilara. Feel free to add me up on LinkedIn. It would be great to connect with everybody on the call, and also that's my email address if you ever want to reach me, also personally. So moving on to the next slide, where I then talk about stages of building self-organized teams. Now, I'm sure we are all familiar with all the different stages of team formation. We are used to the forming, storming, the norming, and the performing, isn't it? For me, it goes a little bit more in details than that. I've added 2 extra steps there. So for me, it's about formation. Of course, that's where the team get together for the first time. And they're also trying to understand everybody's way of working, people's different characters, and you can expect some internal conflict, during this period. But like they say, no pain, no gain, isn't it, right? So I always say also that during this time is where the team really start to stretch. And as we all know, when you stretch an elastic band and you stretch it and you hold it out stretched, the beauty about it is when you release that elastic band, it never goes back to its original state. It becomes a bit longer, so that means that it has grown. So in the moment of pain and sometimes in the moment of challenges, that's where we really experience true growth and sustainable growth as well. So when teams are past this stage, they move into the cooperative stage. This is the stage where they will be sharing. There won't be massive sharing, but you will see pockets of sharing and pockets of collaboration. And this is where you also have to be absolutely observant about these different kind of indications in the different stages. Where also here in the cooperative stage, the team will be getting into a rhythm of execution, but not necessarily full delivery. But however, you will see pockets of better understanding compared to the formation stage. Being vocal, in our Scrum teams, sometimes we ask questions and there's this very, uncomfortable silence that happens, right? And that's where everybody starts to stare at each other, and for those who don't share their videos, their video cameras, right? They feel lucky during this particular time of silence because it could get a little bit uncomfortable. But however, in this particular phase or stage here, or when building self-organized teams, this is where you start to see that particular team members start to speak up, especially those who are extroverts, start to speak up a bit more. They start to call out things like risk impediments as well. They start to contribute a little bit more. But not just this alone. How do you facilitate more Scrum team members to become even more vocal? The facilitation technique is huge in terms of bouncing off other Scrum team members as well. Not necessarily putting them in the spot, but giving them a lead. There's a technique where you give them a lead into a conversation where you're not just asking them a question, but you're giving them an idea of what to talk about, through your initial through your initial interaction with them. Next is the collaborative stage. So from being vocal, that's where you start to see that they now start to collaborate a lot more. So not only are they cooperating, not only are they being vocal, now they're speaking to each other. And this is also where you start to see that in the daily stand-ups, you don't see questions being asked between themselves anymore. You start to see that the daily stand-ups are kept strict to the, what did you do from the last time we met, and what are you going to do from now till the next time we meet, and any blockers. In the formation, in the cooperative stages, you might see that the daily stand-up sometimes might not be kept to 15 minutes, right? That's because some of these Scrum team members in these early stages, they don't speak to each other until they get to the daily stand-up. And sometimes they see the daily stand-up as an opportunity to speak to each other. But however, the reverse should be the case. The reverse should be the case where they're speaking to each other before they get to the daily stand-up. Also, pool ways of working, so this is where you start to see proactivity coming into play. This is where you start to see team members being proactive in asking other team members if they need help. Team members also responding to comments from other team members based on knowledge and experience, and you start to see the real glue coming in with the team. Stop, solve, and adapt. Now here is the final phase where the team has reached that state of self-management, self-organization. Usually, in this stage, a team will not wait for any planned periodic retrospection. They would be retrospecting on a daily basis amongst themselves. And you see evidence of that through their conversations and through the actions that they take as well. I'm going to move a little bit faster now because of time. Supporting a journey of self-organized teams. So as we know, the best architectures and requirements and designs emerge from self-organized teams. This is an excerpt taken from scrum.org. But how do you support the journey of a self-organized team? Of course, we've got to train them, we've got to coach them, and we have to mentor them as well. The psychology of self-organizing. With self-organization, what you're trying to do here is your goal is to make people accountable, not hold people accountable. There's a clear difference between making people accountable and holding people accountable. When you try to make people accountable, you are impacting a change in behavior. You are impacting a change in self-belief as well. Remember that not everybody is brought up with the same set of values, with the same set of principles. We must remember that. And we must remember that as Scrum Masters, is our role, is our job to help people move from where they are, from a values perspective, from a principles perspective, from a self-discipline perspective. Help them move from where they are to where they can be, and through that then brings about freedom. A lot of people think that self-discipline brings about restrictions, and brings about a lot of limitations. But the reverse is the case. Self-discipline is freedom, because self-discipline is freedom from frustration, the frustration of not getting responses from your team members when you need a response, the frustration of people that you're dependent on in the Scrum team not doing what they're supposed to do. That self-discipline eliminates all of that. It eliminates disorganization. It eliminates the blame culture. The art of facilitation as well. I spoke about that earlier just now. Encouraging team members to self-validate. And facilitating that self-validation as well by ensuring that you're bouncing off all your Scrum team members in the sessions, you know, call their names out and ask them, what do you think? Oh, how, could we have done this better? You know, John, could we have done this any differently? Mark, you know, and bounce off, you know, create engagement. Daily Scrum meetings, I've spoken about that already. And the sprint retrospective, of course, is a continuous improvement, which equals high standards of self-organizing. How do you keep all of this alive, isn't it, right? I'll come to that in a minute. Just quickly also making sure that we understand that failure is steps to success. That's what failure is about. You know, we must encourage our teams to fail where they can. Well, as long as, you know, they don't, as long as they keep to all the regulations, the GDPR rules as well, you know, so please, you know, I put a little disclaimer out there, right? You know, I'm not saying go and fail and then run the organization to the ground, you know, but failing where we can afford to and learning from it as well, you know. Like I said on here, failing is progress, and failing, of course, means a step closer to success. But it's not just about failing, isn't it? You know, because a lot of people fail, get emotional about the failure, and then get lost in that emotion. We must not do that. We must understand that once we fail, we focus on what we've learned from it. You know, what have we learned? And not just what have we learned, what are we going to do with that learning is even more important than what we've learned. And that's something that we must remember and something that we must continue to encourage our Scrum teams in doing. The pillars, the values of Scrum uphold all of these actions and all of these activities that I'm talking about. You know, transparency and inspection is huge in driving and embedding the culture of self-organization. Why? Because transparency, you know, once transparency is fully embedded and adopted in the Scrum team, there's nowhere for anybody to hide, right? You know, that's the beauty about transparency, right? With transparency, automatically comes high levels of standard because everybody and anybody can see what you're doing, how you're doing it, and how you're reacting to what you're doing and how you're doing it as well. And that automatically ensures that you don't put yourself in an embarrassing position, isn't it? Self-pride comes into play where, you know, you want to be proud because, of course, the whole world is watching. Well, not the whole world actually, but, you know, quite a lot of people, I must say, you know, depending on the size of the organization. Inspection as well, continuous inspection is really, really important. Also understanding the rules and the expectations, you know, across all the Scrum teams, you know, huge, because once I understand what my, what the product owner does and how what they do impacts my own job and my own work, the quality of my own work, and vice versa. That way, there's a better understanding, and I'm more motivated to want to ensure that what I'm doing is of high quality, high standard, and proactive enough to make my product owner's life easy, and vice versa, right? Definition of ready, definition of done, and definition of release as well. You know, all these are rules and guidelines. Like I spoke about the driverless cars at the start, you know, these are the rules and guidelines that help keep the team on the lane of success, on the lane of self-organization. And all this definition of ready and definition of done it is always agreed and put together by the team. All what I have spoken about today, none of this is put together by the Scrum Master or defined by the Scrum Master. However, with experience comes the art of facilitation and the art of guiding the team down the right road. I believe, finally, the tools for self-organizing. So I'm going to end with this, guys, right? Yeah, we all know about team charter. We know what team charter means, you know. So I'm not going to talk too much on that. It is a document that is developed in a group setting, which clarifies the team direction, or, you know, and establishing those boundaries, right? Jira board structure. Now, when creating the Jira board structure, you just don't go and create a structure and then present it to the team. Remember that when team members and individuals, we as human beings, when we are involved in creating something, we have automatically, we have a stronger sense of accountability for what we have created, rather than when somebody creates something for us and lands it on our table and says, you got to use this. We react differently naturally. Having that thought in mind, ensuring that we are engaging our team members when we are creating our Jira board structure, the columns, the workflows, and even down to the statuses, and even the names of the statuses. Making sure that everybody is involved in that is huge, not just because it creates clarity across the Scrum teams. It also creates a sense of empowerment and accountability as well. Living documents. Now, the reason why I call this living documents is because I've seen where Scrum Masters have run retrospectives and used like a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet, saved it on their personal machine, and then sent it out in an email. Right? And then the next time they come, they bring up another document, or maybe sometimes the same document, and then fill it out and send that in an email. Where you can, keep it alive. When I'm talking about keeping it alive, I'm talking about using Confluence, using SharePoint, because that means that at any point in time, the team can go in there, add to it, or update it, especially with the retrospectives. I've got an Agile workbook that I've created. I'll be happy to share it out with you guys as well. I've got Visio workflows as well that I've created, which fall into the Scrum team workflow. I'll talk about that in a minute. But the Agile workbook covers the retrospective. It covers definition of release, definition of ready, definition of done. It also covers things like release planning and also roadmaps as well, all in one spreadsheet. Robust meeting agendas is really, really key as well. Apologies, Alex, I know I'm sort of going over slightly. I shall round up just now. Robust meeting agendas is really, really key. It's super important. And not just putting the agenda in place, but sticking to the agenda as well. In the meetings, once you've finished an agenda item, right, make it a point to tell the team, oh, so we're going over to the next agenda now, which is, XYZ. That way the team will psychologically, it will be embedded psychologically in the team's mind that the agenda is key and it's important that we stick to it. The agenda is also a tool that can be used to ensure that we keep things alive, or we keep conversations alive. I'll give you an example of that very quickly, where in one of our retrospectives, we realized that we could do better in identifying minimum viable products, right? When the requirement comes into the Scrum team, we could do better in slicing that requirement down enough to be able to identify minimum viable products. Now, to make sure that we had those conversations and we had those considerations before we started to build the requirements, we added that minimum viable product conversation as an agenda item in our backlog grooming meetings. So that way, never did we ever forget to make sure that we identified if we could extract a minimum viable product from that particular requirement that we will be discussing in the backlog grooming session. Little things like that, start to make the team understand the importance of self-organization, and also starts to embed that culture of self-organization. The team agreement also, as we know, really, really key. How do we communicate, with respect, with humility, and ultimately with care as well, genuine care for your team member. Scrum team workflows, like I said, I've got video diagrams that cut across swim lanes of the different Scrum roles, both from a behavioral-driven development to a test-driven development framework. Yeah. So I think, time hasn't permitted me to talk as much as I would have loved to, but I think I've hopefully shared a little that I can with you guys. If you'd like to know more, or if you'd like me to share the bits and pieces in terms of the templates that I have that could hopefully help a few of us on the call, feel free to reach out to me. It's been an absolute pleasing pleasure to have been given the opportunity to speak. I hope I haven't bored you. you know, and I hope I haven't confused you either, you know, but yeah, you know, stay safe, you know, and Alex, again, thanks for putting this together.
Sage, thank you very much. Great visuals, great talk. I can assure you that wasn't boring. What we'll do is you were great, so we'll book you again, and you can have a longer time slot next time. I've had quite a few people ask me, Sage, if they can have access to your slides. Are you comfortable, and will they be available for people? Should they request them?
Oh yes, definitely, yes. I'll send my invoices over as well. You know, no tax, please. Yeah, but I'm just kidding. No. Of course, yeah. I'll send it over to you, Alex, and I'm sure you can distribute it. Yeah, cheers for that.
All right, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. As I say, apologies. Our second speaker is having some technical difficulties, so we're going to go straight over to Anikh. So Anikh is a business and delivery director at this place. His talk is on design and dev collaborative techniques. So, over to you.
That's great. Thanks, Alex, and thank you, Sage. Brilliant talk. Great to hear from you. Great to get your insights. And yeah, I definitely share with you in some of the passion for Scrum. You know, when I first experienced a bit of Scrum, it changed my life. I started organizing everything into sprints, and including my wedding preparations. My wife-to-be at that time was definitely the product owner, let's just say. Yeah, trying to carry on some tradition with Kanban boards, and that kind of thing. My son now at home doing all the kind of learning, trying to use some of that, but he just wants to do the fun stuff like Pokemon. So still got some work to do there, but let's see. So just going to share my screen just as we kind of get started here. Sage, just give me a thumbs up if you can see that. Cool, great, thank you very much. Cool. Okay, so yeah, so thanks everyone for coming along to the meetup tonight. Fantastic to have you guys sticking around for my talk as well. What a big act to follow in the form of Sage, with some really great insights there in terms of his use of Scrum and self-organizing teams. So some really good ideas there, which I'll definitely take forward. So for my slot now, what we're going to be talking about is various ways to ensure a smooth collaboration between design and dev. Having managed and coached different teams over the years, I've learned that teams need to act as one unit. Different disciplines need to come together to look at ideas from all angles, and that's some of the stuff that we'll kind of step through in the next 15 minutes or so. So as you're aware, if you do have any questions throughout, please do type them directly to Alex, and we can cover them at the end of the talk. Let me just get on here. Here we are. So my name's Anikh. I'm a business and delivery director at this place, working with a range of clients across lots of different industries and helping them to really create digital experiences for their customers and people. My background is in Agile coaching and Agile software delivery for the past 10 years or so, working across different teams, helping them to continuously improve, primarily through the use of Agile delivery techniques. So prior to this place, I was working at another kind of tech consultancy called Digital, kind of with a big presence across the UK. So looking after the kind of like the Agile coaching team there for a few years, which was a great experience. And then prior to my few years at Digital, I was working at Sky for around 6 or 7 years or so, Scrum mastering a few different teams across the business, which again was a fantastic learning experience through the years. So feel free to get in touch after today's talk and connect. We'll be happy to continue the conversation after this session. So I'm going to start with a question, and I want to just kind of get you thinking about something. Have you guys ever ordered a tailor-made outfit like a suit? You know, maybe it's kind of a suit. Could be any kind of outfit that you've had to get made. Maybe it's not come back quite as expected. Yeah, for example, maybe you spoke to the stylist and selected the Italian fabric, maybe some paisley lining, a slim fit jacket, and maybe some kind of cropped trousers as well, if that's kind of your style. But then maybe it came back from the tailors a little bit something like this. I mean, this obviously is, worst case scenario for Michael Jordan here. Yeah, that's not, I wouldn't describe that as a fully slim fit jacket. I don't know about you guys. And also it's come with a bottle of cologne in the front pocket as well. It's not quite, I think, what we had in mind. But you go back to the tailor and you say that this is not quite what I was after. And they say, yeah, sorry about that. We couldn't source the fabric. We couldn't attach the lining, couldn't make the jacket as slim as you'd like. And we didn't have the scissors or the tools to cut the trousers either, but hope it's still okay. A not so bad scenario would be that before the suit's made, the tailor goes back to the stylist and says, actually, there's something that we can't do. And here's why. Here's what also we can do. And the stylist then creates a new design based on what's achievable, something that's a bit more feasible. And then you might get something a little bit closer to the original specification, something a little bit more like this, And we can probably agree it's a little bit better, although it does still kind of look like a pair of curtains. But it is a bit better in terms of Michael Jordan's fashion sense. But the best case scenario is when the stylist and the tailor step through the customizations and the selections together, checking, rechecking, deciding, defining, and agreeing on the final bespoke design of that tailored suit before it gets made. Then you may end up something that fits the original design, something a little bit more like this. Much better, much better. So these challenges with tailor-made suits and similar scenarios can translate into the world of digital product delivery. I just want to pause on this question then for a second. What can make it difficult for developers and designers to work together successfully? And with this key question, I'm going to pause here for around 30 seconds or so. I'd like you just to reflect on this just for a second. Think about what are the key challenges, what can really make it a challenge there for these two disciplines to work together successfully and seamlessly. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds just to reflect on that. If you do have something you'd like to mention, please do feel free to unmute and just mention that vocally as well, and we can reflect on that before we move on. So just going to pause here for a few more seconds.
So, hello, this is Jamie.
Hi, Jamie.
For our team, I know one thing that makes it difficult is that the designers often have grandeur ideas of what they want, but it's a lot of the things they ask, or some of the things they ask for are not really possible technically without introducing a lot of spaghetti code and hacky code to make it work correctly. It's not code that's scalable. It's not something that is maintainable.
Yep.
So that's probably our biggest thing that makes it difficult.
Cool. Yeah, and that's great. Thanks, Jamie, for that. Yeah, really good, really valid point there. And a very common challenge where we have maybe slightly different aims or goals set for the disciplines of design and dev, and then we have a bit of a kind of a clash really of desirability versus feasibility. We'll come on to more in just a second. So absolutely spot on there. Really valid challenge there. We've got time for one more before I move on from this stage. Anyone else like to mention from their experience what makes it difficult for developers and designers to work together successfully?
I've seen designer and designer teams to want to work in a different at a different pace, basically. So usually they like to think about the designs and the user research before the developers start. So you're often a step ahead of development. So that makes it sometimes hard to bring them together.
Yes. Yeah. Again, fantastic. Really valid point there as well. And definitely grounded in experience there. And from my experience, and we'll come on to this in a second a little bit more, probably expand on this at a later date, but there's two kind of key approaches. There's a kind of collective approach where everyone's moving at the same pace, working on the same set of priorities at the same time. And another approach, which is more of a staggered approach, where you have the UX and design team or people working just ahead of the dev team. The former, where everyone's working at the same pace, is really good for mature discipline teams who have worked together for a while, and they kind of mature in terms of their agility, let's say, whereas the staggered approach is better for teams who are new to more of an agile way of working, kind of getting up to speed, whether it's the developers or the designers or other roles involved. So yeah, really valid point, which we'll cover as we progress. So thanks guys for your contributions there. So we'll move into now a kind of a summary really here for me of the key challenges from my experience faced when design and dev are trying to work together in a seamless manner. And that first one really, to Jamie's point, is that mismatch of desirability and feasibility. You know, some things are designed that can't be built or just not feasible to build for their return on investment. You know, this is happening where we have sometimes the vision for the design team being set separately, maybe to the direction of the dev team in some cases. What this means really is that the two teams, let's call them two disciplines, are trying to achieve a slightly different set of goals, and they will end up with a disjointed end solution. Okay, so that's kind of the first key challenge. Second one then is design and dev sometimes focusing on a different set of priorities. So a step down really from the vision and the direction, but a set of priorities, and maybe creating things in a different order. This could lead to creating an inefficient, potentially diverging experience, and it can also contribute to teams not having reusable components and sometimes duplicating effort. A lack of cross-dev team knowledge sharing is also a factor here and contributing to this challenge. Number three then, in terms of the key challenges, not centering the focus on both disciplines on clear goals or needs of the product or user. You know, we're all kind of fairly clear on the importance, I think, of having a user-focused approach here, but feedback and insight absolutely must inform this, and just kind of almost reiterating that point that the focus does need to be on the user, on the kind of end user, for both disciplines and for all disciplines involved. And then the final one, number four, in terms of these key challenges, if the teams or the disciplines are working in isolation, then decisions will be made separately too, which means either perspective is missing from the discussion and the decision-making process. Here, constant communication and collaboration is needed to avoid this. And even from my own experience, actually sitting on different ends of the same office floor can cause barriers to communication and isolated decisions. So one kind of set of teams I was working with previously, we have the dev teams, one end of the floor, design and creative teams towards the other end of the floor, and literally that was causing a barrier for people to walk down the end of the floor and have a conversation about something. For both teams, actually, it goes both ways. And just because you're sat with a team, and maybe not now in kind of lockdown mode, but back when we were working in the same physical space, having your team sat around you meant that you could just turn around, have a quick conversation about something and make a decision just like that. That does miss out then on one of the other perspectives, to feed into that conversation. So really key to kind of make sure that firstly, there's no isolation, but also that decisions are made in a way that includes all kind of perspectives. So, excuse me, those are the four key challenges from my experience. And what I want to do now really is just step through a typical sprint assuming we're using the Scrum approach here, and just highlight some of the key opportunities that we've got here for collaboration, because collaboration is the big theme here between design and dev. So, kicking off a piece of work or a feature, having everyone involved from the start, user, business, tech, and other disciplines all involved. The reminder here is everyone's part of the same team. Everyone's working together from the start, and doing a kickoff together where all these perspectives are input to the start of an idea or a feature allows everybody to challenge, question, and have a healthy debate, which then ensures a better shaped product at the end of it. A good example here is design sprints. Design sprints are an effective way of bringing everyone together, focusing on a common problem and goal in a forum that helps to get to a few validated options at the end of it to move forward with. And not only has then everyone fed into the ideas, but they've also gained buy-in, context, and a collective strategic direction with the product or features. Then moving into refinement, backlog refinement, and sprint planning sessions. At the end of these sessions, we want to make sure that we're knowing, what we're building, why we're building, and roughly how we're building it in kind of a feasible way. We want to have answered these questions together to include all perspectives in that. And we want to know just enough for the team to then get started on designing and building the product. But what we want to do, ideally, is allow for the detailed questions and the detailed problems to be answered and solved throughout the creation process via feedback and via collaboration between everyone involved. So these sessions are a perfect opportunity to feedback, review, and go through questions around ideas for future work that's maybe a bit further down in the backlog as well. And a reminder here, actually, just to kind of reinforce the point here around a ticket or a user story, it's not just about the tech side of it when you've got a ticket or a story in the backlog. What it is a placeholder for collaboration. It is a promise for a conversation between, in this case, developers and designers, but obviously more as well, product owner, QA, and other stakeholders or roles that are involved in the creation of a product. Devs feeding their input into the early stage design conversations, and designers feeding their input into the technical decisions will make sure that we're involving everyone from the start. Even if it's just a 5-minute conversation to ensure everyone's aligned, and even if it's actually then turning into maybe a 30-minute conversation, at least that discussion has been had at the start before maybe too much work has been done and potentially may need a lot of changing or a lot of rework. So a way to do this is doing a walkthrough at the point that any user story or ticket is picked up. This walkthrough could be done between the developers, QA, design, PO, an analyst, maybe whatever those key roles are in your team that you're working with. What happens here is then you're walking through that ticket or scenario or story from a user's perspective. You're considering the design and tech elements throughout the journey and capturing any scenarios that haven't yet been thought about. This means you're defining that experience together, the acceptance criteria together, that would define what success means for that story once it's built. Another technique here is to use real-time collaboration and code producing tools in some cases, such as Figma or a Bootstrap instance. And these are some of the ways that just make it easier to move seamlessly then from design into dev and back again. Yeah, because you do need to go both ways. It's not just a linear approach. It's not just a waterfall approach, because of course this is the Agile London meetup, not the Waterfall London meetup. So making sure that we are able to move forwards and backwards and pivot and change direction as and when needed. So constant feedback opportunities throughout the sprint timeline, factoring in design for designers to collaborate and pair with devs to feedback and adjust the feature as well. This means that you're evolving the functionality, you're evolving that design together as well, both of those things through that sprint. The focus needs to be on the end product that the users are going to be using, rather than too much focus on the deliverables along the way. Contributing to a design system or a design toolkit along the way will also make it more efficient to implement reusable elements in future, and also enable further almost scalability of the online proposition. So having that maintained together is an interesting kind of technique. Then towards the end of the sprint, we're getting towards kind of the end of this work, or this kind of user story, demoing that to all parties and meeting all the acceptance criteria definition are done and taking everyone through that. The same roles that got together for that walkthrough, getting together and for a quick demo of what's been built towards the end. This can sometimes act as a peer review session or a design QA session, or a wider feedback session for this piece of work. And then the final step here is then kind of into the sprint review type forums or showcase type forums, where you're reviewing the overall work and in the review, the end of the sprint, to all stakeholders. You're doing this together as one team. You're all contributing to that demo of the work as well, and explaining decisions and any rationale behind the direction that the product is taking from both a technical and a user-centric perspective. Any changes or feedback that come from that session can then be added to the backlog for future sprints. You can discuss the value that it brings, or maybe have that discussion maybe in a separate refinement session, and really just talk about whether what you've currently built is better than what's currently there in the live product. Another interesting thing that you could do here is reflect on past features that have been live for a while and the metrics associated with those. So how have they performed? How have they added value? And what impact has been made by those features that you have previously delivered? Absolutely crucial to really be reflecting on that, whether they've been successful or not. Actually, in both cases, both of those are learning opportunities. So that's kind of the key opportunities then for collaboration through a sprint for both design and dev disciplines. So moving on then into the kind of final piece then, just before I kind of wrap up here, are my key takeaways. These are my key takeaways or techniques for improving ways of working then between design and developers. So number one, involve both designers and developers early on in the process, right from the conceptual idea if possible. That healthy tension that you'll get from that collaboration will help in shaping and forming a product that will then take place between these disciplines. That will result in a more accurate, refined and validated product throughout, but also in less time. And this is compared to if the design was done well ahead of the devs getting involved. So the key point there, really making sure you've got that early engagement between both. Number two, then, ensuring communication channels are open throughout the sprint, encouraging regular structured conversations about the user stories and the tickets, and promoting constant feedback and questions during the sprint as well. And this can be achieved through lots of pairing between designers and developers. Number three, then, using design systems or toolkits to increase that efficiency of delivering features and reusing components across different products or propositions. The tight coupling here between design and dev when maintaining a consistent kind of implementable design system helps both sides to get more context of each other's perspectives. It's kind of walking a mile or a little bit in each other's shoes. And the final then takeaway for me is keeping the focus of the team on the end product the users will be using, aiming to have a valuable, desirable and functional user experience at the end is really the core focus here. Having access to user research and insight to fully understand how users will use the end product will help the team overall to gain that empathy and understanding that will then in turn help the team collectively put themselves in the user's shoes. So there we have it. We've covered off some of the key challenges and some reflections from a couple of you in the group as well, which has been great for collaborating across those disciplines. Some vital opportunities during an example sprint for these roles to work together. And then my 4 key takeaways then, really to ensure a healthy collaborative relationship between both dev and design. And of course, not to forget some of Michael Jordan's fashion faux pas earlier on as well. So at this point, I would just like to thank you all for your time and participation. Like I mentioned earlier, really happy to continue the conversation now and also at a later date. So feel free to get in touch with me after today's talk. Yeah, thank you very much.
Anikh, thank you very much. Fantastic. And I'm sure every single person in this chat has got a few photos in the closet of some interesting dress in the earlier stages of our lives. I do have some good news for everyone though. Allan has, he's with us. He's sorted his technical difficulties and he will now be delivering the third and final talk for the evening, which is great news. So Allan is an Agile advisor and author of The Art of Agile Product Ownership. And his talk this evening is A Product Owner's Common Mistakes. Allan, do you just want to check your screen share is okay? You're also on mute at the moment, so I can't hear you.
Okay. How's that now?
That looks perfect. I will hand over to you. Your audio's good and visuals look good.
Thank you. And yeah, awfully sorry for that not being ready to go on time, but hey, these things happen. So some common product owner mistakes, or if you want, things I will rant about, things that are pet annoyances of mine. So this is just a list really of things that I see product owners doing again and again, or situations product owners are put in. Sometimes they don't have control over these, and unfortunately sometimes these things start to be regarded as normal and they shouldn't be. So without any further ado, the number 1 mistake is not meeting your customers. And okay, before you say it, I am aware that we're all locked down and nobody's meeting customers. And I do accept that at the moment, this is particularly difficult to actually meet a customer. However, you could have a Zoom call with a customer. You could just call them up on the good old telephone. You could drop them an email and say, hi, have you got time to talk? If you don't meet your customers, you don't really know why they're doing things. You don't know what they're trying to achieve. Even if you're the best statistics and analytics in the world, you can't tell what is behind those numbers. So you really need to get out and meet your customers, or get on the phone, get on the Zoom. Statistics can't tell you what you need to know. You need to know what they need. You need to know what they value. You need to know when you are wrong, because actually statistics can't, they'll tell you people aren't using a feature. but they won't tell you that they're not using a feature because they can't find it, or they're not using a feature because it means nothing to them, or they can't use a feature because it's so unusable. It's very difficult to know when you're wrong from statistics. And the other thing is, as a product owner, your authority does not come from a place you hold on an organizational chart. There may be an organizational chart that shows you at some level, sure. But when you're in the organization, when you're talking to your development teams, your authority comes from your specialist skills and your specialist knowledge, and that is customers. You know the customers. So as an organization I was working with last year, and the product owner wasn't getting out and meeting customers. And this organization had a consultancy group. And the result was that the consultants could turn around at any time and say, hey, I was speaking to a customer last week and they said this. Or that a potential customer wants to sign a contract and they want this. And the product owner couldn't fight that because they didn't have the authority that comes from speaking to customers. There's a special kind of authority that comes when you can say, a customer told me, or I see customers who are struggling with. So you need to meet your customers. As I say, it could be Zoom, it could be Skype, it could be the Google phone. And there's customers and users and stakeholders, that there's other people in there as well, but specifically the customers. And before we move on to the next one, I want to leave you with one of my favorite quotes from Peter Drucker, the management guru of legend. He says, what a customer buys is seldom what a company sells. If you are not speaking to your customers, if you are not understanding what your customers are using the product for and the value it's delivering, then how do you really know what they are buying, what they think, what you are giving them, and how they're relating to it? So you must talk to your customers, okay? Okay. Mistake number 2, not putting a value on a story. Here's a fairly common enough story. And, you know, most of the time you see an effort score on a story. In fact, we're all told stories need to be estimatable and we need to put an effort score on them. And that's how we plan everything. The thing is, there's no sense of value on that story. What we need is some indication on that story of why that story is valuable and how valuable it is to other stories. We're used to this idea of relative estimation of story effort. What we need is relative estimation of story value. We need to get away from doing things through value and look at to get away from the effort estimates and get towards the value estimates. You know, okay, 100 business points may be as meaningless as 100 story points. But the thing is, if you know that story is worth 100 business points, and most of the stories you're working on are worth 500 business points, it immediately becomes clear that it's not valuable. Conversely, if most of your stories are 10 business points and this is 100 business points, it suddenly becomes clear that this is really, really valuable. There's an exercise I do where I get people using the old planning poker cards to put business points, business value on stories. And we did this with a client once. And we went to the client site and the product owner read out what she thought were the must-have features. She categorized all the feature requests, must have, should have, you know how it goes. And she took one envelope with about 50 must-have stories in it. And we read them out. And the clients voted on these stories using the planning poker cards. They removed more stories in a 2-hour meeting than the development team had delivered in the last 2 sprints, simply because the customers said that story has no value. They played the 0 card. In one point, they said, tear that story up. It has no value to me. If you don't get a handle on the value of stories and the relative values of stories, then you get stuck in this chasing effort, and you don't really know where the value is. And I want you to put the value on there before you put the estimate. I want you to put the value on there before you put the effort estimates. because one will anchor the other. And when you put an effort estimate on there, and then you put an value estimate, people will always put more than the effort. What you want to do is you want to put an effort estimate on, a value estimate on there, and then you challenge the developers and you say, you know what, this one doesn't have a lot of value, but we need to do it. Can we come up with a solution which we can deliver relatively easily, relatively quickly, that represents that it's a lot less value, but we're still going to do it. So put the value estimates before you put the effort estimates. Value will change the effort. I've done this exercise this afternoon with some people. I give them similar but slightly different stories, and the difference is some stories have big numbers, $1 million on them, and some have small numbers, $5,000 on them. And guess what? The effort estimates that come back reflect that value directly. And the problem that builds on this, the next one is planning by effort estimates. And I liken this to getting a whole bunches of pieces of string. That's all your effort estimates are. It's just how long is this? It's a piece of string. And you lie all the pieces of string together and you think, ooh, have we got a sprint that's full? Have we got a deliverable this week? Have we got a quarterly release or something? And we base all our planning around the effort. And what we should be doing is planning our estimate, our work around the value, not the effort. For starters, when you plan by estimate, your effort estimates are almost certainly wrong. There are very, very few teams in this world who can accurately estimate work. There are things we can do to moderate that, and some teams can get very good at estimating effort and forecasting. But you're better off assuming that your effort estimates are just frankly wrong. They're wrong from the start, so to base any form of planning on them means you're building on sand. So plan first with value. Put the value on your stories and work towards delivering, obviously, the high value stories first. Be aware that the value can change over time. I'm not sure where all the green's coming from on my slides. I assume whoever's got Zoom can add some stuff on here. So let's get the value on the table, and let's look at where the value is and base our work on the value rather than the effort. Appreciate as well how value changes over time, because a story that's worth a lot of money if you have it next month may not be worth half as much money if it doesn't get delivered for 6 months. Value will change over time, and usually the later something is delivered, the less it is worth. So understand how value changes over time, and I will also tell you which are the time critical stories. You may have 2 stories and A may be worth more than B, but if B's value declines very quickly in the coming weeks while A's value continues at a constant level, it may make more sense to do the low value story early because you're going to lose the value opportunities. So plan with value, appreciate how it changes over time, and then simply plan backwards. I know this is an anathema for project managers, but we didn't invite project managers to this call. We need to say, when do we need these things by? What can we do by those dates? Not, can we build the perfect solution? Can we build the best ever solution? We need to build good, and yes, high quality. We don't want to rack up your technical debt, but we need to scope features down, and we need to plan work that we can fit in by those deadlines which imply the value, the dates that go with those values, and then we work backwards in our planning. And we then start to say, not how long will it take to do this story, but how much of this story can we get in the time we have? How much of this story can we get in the next week, in the next 2 weeks, in the next 3 weeks? Plan backwards and change the scope. And remember this, a little bit sooner is worth more than a lot later. We have a tendency to go large. We put more and more features, more and more functionality, more and more stories into the thing we're building, because we equate more with more stuff with more value. And when we do that, we delay the delivery date stamp because we're trying to do more. And particularly if you're not doing continuous delivery or fortnightly deliveries, when we put more things in an effort to get more value, we delay when those items get to the customers, the users. And when we delay when those items get to the customers, we delay the time when the benefit and the value starts to flow. It is often, perhaps almost always the case that delivering less sooner will give you more value overall, because you start to get the values and the benefits sooner. You don't delay it. And get that value in as soon as possible. And the other thing is, when you do that, you then get to start the virtuous feedback cycle. You start to get feedback, you start to understand what people appreciate, you understand where the value is, you understand what you should have done differently, etc., etc. This is an annoyance of mine, not just with product owners, but with many people in the Agile community. When we're faced with this question, why from a business perspective should we work Agile, not traditionally, or is this project best for Agile or waterfall? We get into all these arguments about feedback and motivation, and the simple reason is it's about money. When you work in an Agile fashion, when you deliver a little bit sooner and then you add some more and deliver some more value and some more, you actually cause your ROI calculations to go through the roof. If you model ROI, then starting to get some benefit, some value early does fantastic things for your ROI calculations. So let's start delivering the value sooner, get it in the hands of customers. Let's start banking that value, and we'll kickstart the feedback loop. So these three so far are really annoyances I have with product owners as individuals. Product owners need to get out there or get on the phone, talk to your customers. You need to start thinking about the value of stories, and you need to start planning by value, not by effort. The next couple of items I've got from you are not so much mistakes the product owner makes, but more the organization that employs the product owner. And these really can put the product owners in very difficult positions, and they're kind of almost set up for fail in many cases. So first mistake is the product owner is not the last manager standing. As many of you know, Scrum and other Agile methods come along and they say there should be no managers. Now, we can talk about whether that's good or bad, but it is fairly true to say that when teams go Agile, and particularly Scrum, you start to see fewer managers. Organization I worked with last year, you had all these squads, Spotify squads and chapter leads and all of this, but very few people with a title manager left. And the problem here is that organizationally, outside of those teams, the rest of the organization doesn't know who to relate to. The rest of the organization goes, well, I would have gone to a development manager or a project manager, but they're all gone now. But there's this Scrum Master person and there's this product owner person, and sometimes there isn't even a Scrum Master. And they kind of look and they say, oh, that product owner person, who we used to call a product manager, is the manager of the team. And so they relate to that person as a manager and as the manager of the team. Product owners are not there to manage the team. Product owners are not there to be line managers. Product owners are there to decide what is the next thing we are doing. The product owner's authority is all about understanding customers and their need, and the product owner exercises that authority by walking into a sprint planning meeting and saying, this sprint, this is what I want us to build. The product owner doesn't get their authority through bossing people around. But outside of the team, people sometimes think product owners do. They're not. A product owner is not a project manager, is not a development manager, is not a line manager, is not a delivery manager. They may also be a product manager. That's a special case. But organizations, they come along and they remove a lot of our managers, but a lot of the management work remains, and it ends up on the desk of the product owner. And the product owner has got much better things to do. The product owner needs to be getting out and meeting customers. So a product owner is a specialist in what the customer needs, is a specialist in how to increase value, and the product owner is short of time. If for no other reason that the product owner only has 24 hours in a day, the product owner cannot be meeting customers, prioritizing backlogs, refining stories, line managing people, project managing them, etc., etc. Okay? A product owner is not the remaining last manager. They're a specialist in what needs to be done. This is another pet hate I come across from in organizations. There's this belief that the product owner role is some kind of technical role, some kind of administration role, and we can just get a developer to do that. You know, we can just get a particular developer who's skilled with code to be a product owner, because they know which way to put the jigsaw together, don't they? The product owner role is not about deciding which bits of jigsaw to fit together. The product owner role is about deciding what is the picture on the jigsaw. So this is one you see commonly, that we get a developer and we ask the developer to fill in as the product owner, because we don't have a product owner. The business can't give us a product owner. We don't have anyone with product management or business analysis skills. So we'll just get a developer because there used to be a technical architect. That doesn't work. Product owners, they are there to understand customers. They need to feel the customer pain. They need to empathize with customers. They're skilled at talking to customers. They do the analysis. Maybe they look at markets. Maybe they look at value analysis. Maybe they talk to different stakeholders. You know, there's all sorts of things a product owner needs to be doing. And frankly, they don't have the time to be a coder as well. But the product owner skills are all about customers and understanding what needs to be done. And developers skills are about, well, coding and machines. And developers empathize with the technology. The technology says to them, refactor me, upgrade me, change me, design me using this method. The skill set of a developer is very different to the skill set of a product owner. And actually, their whole modus operandi is different, because product owners are about analyzing the need, and developers are about synthesizing the solution. Developers are creating solutions for needs that product owners see. So just saying to a developer, hey, can you fill in as product owner, doesn't cut the mustard. It's a different skill set. It's even a different type of personality in some cases. So organizations shouldn't be asking developers to act up. I am all for, by the way, developers deciding they want to change their role. They want to move into this field. They do need to learn some new skills, but they can be excellent product owners if they make that leap over to the analysis, the customer side. So, look, I didn't check what time I started, but there's 5 pet hates. I could go on. I mean, I'd love to tell you that owners do not report to managers. Again and again, I hear of product owners who report to product managers. The most important people in any organization are the owners. Think of all those traditional family businesses. Generation after generation, the same family own the business. Managers are hired guns. Managers come and go. Managers report to owners. Continuing from the one before, product owners who code. Product owners shouldn't have time to code, even if they're very good at it. The other one is fear of coding, not the product owners coding, but product owners are fearful of anybody coding. A few years ago, I got to sit in a room at a large bank, and there was 12 other people in this room, most of them business analysts, project managers, architects. And we spent the whole morning talking about what user stories they should ask the outsourcer to create. I realized halfway through there was the blind leading the blind. They were talking about OAuth authentication. And even I've written an OAuth authentication client. Yeah. And it's just this organization was so scared of anyone coding. Often coding a solution and throwing it away is faster than talking about it. Okay. Product owners who don't spend time with the team, product owners who do too much. Look, I could go on. I'm sure out there you've seen some mistakes too, and maybe you want to share them. Okay, that's my rant over. That's me. There's some of my books. The latest one is Art of Product Ownership, so it fits right in with this. But hey, I just write too many books.
Alan, thank you very much for that. Great talk. I've had some good questions come in, so I will get to those now. Do you want to just unshare your screen?
Yeah. Where is the unstop share? There's the stop share.
There we go. Fantastic. So a few of these questions have come in to all of you. And as there's 3 of you tonight, I'm going to sort of time box it. So just keep your answers, if I may request, just to sort of 30 seconds to 1 minute so we can hear from all of you. So the first question to all 3 of you, Anikh, I'll go to you first. What literature do you recommend to help someone new on their Agile journey?
Oh, good questions. There's so much out there. There is so much out there. And it's a funny question, actually, because Allan himself actually ran a training course early on in my career, which I attended, and got some great insight, and still using lots of that stuff today. So, firstly, I'd recommend one of his courses, actually.
Oh, thank you.
No worries at all. But I think it'd be good to, so whoever asked that question, maybe if you can message me separately, because I think there's lots of good stuff out there. I think it depends really on the areas that you want to focus on, or your role, or that kind of thing. So rather than a blanket thing, I'd probably say let's pick up separately and figure out what the more specific bits are.
No problem. Sage, have you had any good literature that you found has helped you? Obviously, you said that you were a recruiter in your previous life. I certainly know the struggles of that job. So, yeah, is there anything you can recommend that has helped you on your Agile journey?
Apologies, Alex. Was that question for me?
Yeah, the question was to all 3 of you, yes. So the question was, what literature do you recommend to help someone new on their Agile journey?
Okay, so I'll just reach up if I can answer that to start with. What I can do is I can share a few books here. So this one is powerful. I know Allan did say about estimation and planning, and I'm kind of cautious he mentioned it. But I think, Allan, I'm on the same page as you as well. Honestly, product value pointing is absolutely key, no doubt about it. And that's something that needs to be brought more to life in organizations and generally in Agile. But definitely, this book has helped me out. Mike Cohen, Agile Estimation and Planning, powerful. This is another powerful one as well. The Professional Product Owner as well, really, really strong. And ultimately by Stasia Viscardi as well, the Professional Scrum Master Handbook. So I think these 3 books really have, and of course the Scrum Guide, no doubt about it, has sort of changed my life and my Agile journey.
Thanks, Sage. And Allan?
I'm still on my bookshelves, and I'm hopefully out of date because I've written more books than I've read in the last few years. I'm going to say
Feel
this.
Feel free to use this opportunity as a plug.
Yeah, type my name into Google. Anything I've written to Amazon, anything I've written is good. I'm going to say this. Oh, you can't. My virtual background stop. I have to stop the virtual background so I can do this. I'm going to say Kent Beck. Right back in the beginning, there was this book, Extreme Programming Explained by Kent Beck, and that was, okay, it was 1999, it was 2000. I still look back on it. That was such a motivating book. It was certainly, oh my God, this crazy world. The other one, if you've not seen it, Peter Senge, The Fifth Discipline, which is generally seen as more of a managerial type book, but that's almost philosophy, because ultimately Agile is all about learning. The only thing you can do wrong in Agile is to do things the same as you did 3 months ago. And the Fifth Discipline is all about helping organizations learn.
Thank you very much. Sage, what encouraged a career change for you to become a Scrum Master?
Sorry, I was on mute, Alex. Yeah,
No worries.
I think I did a changeover from. I was working in the recruitment industry as a Scrum Master. Actually, apologies, I didn't make that clear. But I did make a change of career, from branch management, because I used to be a branch manager in one of the big banks on the high street. But I did make a career change from branch management into Scrum. And what made me make a career change? Again, it's the future, isn't it? I think we must continuously think not just about now, but about the future, because the future is not only now, but it is the now of tomorrow, isn't it? So Agile, Scrum, that's not going anywhere at all. In fact, come 2 years, 3 years, 5 years time, I will debate that it will override project management, because again, if there's any waterfall project managers in the house, which I doubt, but if they are, right, they would probably debate on that project management does, does realize results and realize outcomes, and I would agree with that. It does, however, what I would add to that is that sustainable outcomes is what Agile and Scrum focuses on. So not necessarily painting over the cracks on the wall just to make it look good. Is actually tearing down the whole wall, rebuilding it with quality materials is what Agile and Scrum is about. And that's what really caught me, honestly.
Thank you. Another question has come into all three of you. So if we sort of time box this to, as I say, 30 seconds to 60 seconds. And Nick, I'll go to you first. How do you all think COVID and flexible working will affect agility?
Yeah, really, really interesting question. So, so from my perspective, it's interesting because for so many years, I've been talking about how important co-location is for teams and how much kind of benefit that brings about, which of course it does, and I'm sure everyone's experienced that. But what's more important now is getting a feeling of co-location whilst everyone's remote. So it's utilizing more tools and techniques to make sure that we are feeling like we can have quick conversations with people who would usually be sat next to each other. We can do some screen sharing and some pairing. We're all involved in the right kind of sessions at the right time. And so for me, it's really about making sure that there's that sense of co-location. We are still one team, even though we are in separate locations. So for me, that's the key thing around tools and techniques.
Thank you. Alan?
I think COVID is giving Agile generally one hell of a boost, because at the moment, if you can't pivot, you're dead. How many project plans that were good on the 1st of March are still valid? I think at the moment, we're running on a lot of the home working stuff. We're running a lot of social capital we built up in the offices. I think we won't really know until we go back to the offices. And I think we will value home working more, but I think we'll value office working more. We'll just be more prepared to make that balance. And we'll be able to make educated decisions, whereas before, most of us had only experienced one or the other.
And Sage?
I think change was bound to happen, I think, isn't it, right? So just sort of echoing what Alan said and what Anikh said as well. Change was absolutely bound to happen. What COVID has done is it's just brought about that change a lot quicker. That's all it's done, So Agile definitely is all about change. It's about continuous iteration, continuous improvements, and continuously changing the way we behave and the way we interact as well. So online brings about the development of new skills. I think I was speaking to you about that earlier, Alex, isn't it? That interacting online is different from interacting in person. I think maybe that's to a certain degree because we can see ourselves in our cameras. So we're a little bit more self-aware, but apart from that, I think what it does is it creates that skill for remote interaction, which is different from physical interaction. And that alone is a powerful skill to learn on its own. So yeah, I think moving forward, definitely, more self-discipline, more accountability is going to be expected of individuals as well, because you're remotely working. There's nobody looking over your shoulder. There's nobody sort of, timing you, on bits and pieces. So, yeah, we definitely will have a lot of work to do in terms of values and discipline and principles as individuals.
Just one very quick point, if I can, Alex, just to add to that, to something that Alan said, just very quickly on that one. The other thing I wanted to mention actually there is business agility has skyrocketed due to COVID. And a real example there is the UK supermarkets and grocers and how quickly they had to turn around changes in the early days of lockdown to enable more delivery slots, to add new online services and ordering capabilities. And they had to do that through thinking of what the idea is going to be, validate it, work across silos across the business and get that designed, built and delivered in the quickest time possible to serve the nation. And that is a real example of how COVID has been the biggest catalyst to any kind of agile transformation.
It's also going to be a big stick, because imagine in a couple of weeks' time, you're all back in the office and you all go back to normal. Oh, relax, fantastic, yeah. And then your boss is going to come along and say, when that COVID thing happened, you guys did an awful lot of stuff really quickly. So what's all this about? You need 6 months to plan it?
Just to add on to that as well, I think MVPs as well, Anikh, you said it absolutely right. I think it puts a lot more focus on MVPs and how quickly we can get those MVPs out as well to start to realize value. Yeah, absolutely
right. Anikh, I had a question for you. For someone who is so heavily embedded in delivery, what's your opinion on the hybrid project management / Scrum Master role that is occasionally advertised?
Yeah. Okay, cool. So on that, I think the first thing to mention is it depends on the person and their skills and their characteristics. That is the foundation of any role, and how successful you can do a role. It doesn't really matter about what the title is. There is this perception that this project manager and the Scrum Master role are interchangeable and they're the same thing. In my opinion, they're not, and from experience, they're not the same role. They are different roles. They share some stuff, absolutely. But for me, the Scrum Master role is a bit of project management, a bit of product ownership, a bit of coaching and facilitation, a bit of analysis, a little bit of everything. And it's very much that facilitation and coach role for that team to help them succeed. Whereas a project manager could be more focused on specific initiatives and helping move that along, and getting stuff in line to move that particular initiative along, maybe not necessarily focused on just one team. So for me, the hybrid role, that's definitely something that's out there in the market and has been for a few years, and I'm sure will be for a few more years. But what it really comes down to is the skills and expertise that you have to be able to play that role effectively, regardless really of what the title is.
Thank you. Allan, should the user value not be measurable? How else can you check your value hypothesis? How could you do that with business points?
I would love you to be able to measure your business value. But there are some things in this world which are very difficult to measure. How will you measure your love for your better half? What actually happens is when you estimate in real numbers, although you might later on be able to go back and say, did that really make the $1 million we thought it would make? The problem is you then get into a discussion about, are you sure it's $1 million? Have you looked at this source? Have you done that type of analysis? Have you considered something else? By staying in the abstract with business points, we're really emphasizing the relative values and how those values may change over time. I think if we get into actual pounds, shillings and pence, we get so many more questions, it becomes a bit unmanageable. So I know it's a little bit unreal, but I find that it works better. I do encourage you, however, as you complete work, to go and measure the value. Go and measure and see, is it delivering the eyeballs? Is it delivering the extra sales, the cost savings? Whatever it is you thought it was going to deliver, is it delivering them? Because too often we skip that evaluation phase. And if we do evaluation, it's the project success criteria, time, value, time, money, features. We do need to get better at evaluating what was done.
Thank you. So Adeyemi has asked a question to everyone in the chat, but probably be interesting to get all three of your opinions on this. How easy is it to transition from a waterfall BA to a Scrum PO or Scrum Master? Or maybe what your advice would be. Sage, should we go to you first?
Yeah, I think Scrum is a lot around the how, isn't it? Whilst still focusing on the what. I think the techniques for product ownership / Agile is a lot more iterative and a lot more customer focused. There's a lot more reverse engineering as well that is done, from a product owner perspective. So I'll maybe answer from a product owner perspective, be a transition to the product owner. I think a business analyst to a certain degree, rely a lot on those that are around them, their immediate circle, to be able to sort of gather requirements and define, what needs to be done. There's a lot of stages, there's a lot of sign-offs, back and forth versioning as well, before things sort of start to get built. But I think with product ownership, there's a lot more empowerment, to understand users, to understand user behavior, to understand how to respond to these user behaviors as well. Also, to understand things like, behavioral-driven development and how this leads into test-driven development as well, and working closely with the development team in bringing, I've said this a few times, but it's so important, bringing MVPs to life and learning from those MVPs as well as quick as you can and iterating on them, So there's a lot more agility when it comes to product ownership than the business analyst, where you get sign-offs, you have to wait, you have to change the version document, you have to go for sign-off again before it then gets to development. So yeah.
Anik?
Yeah, cool. Just to kind of echo some of those, and I think first thing it's worth saying that it is absolutely achievable to transition from any kind of those kind of roles to I'll say, let's say, an Agile role. What I would say also is that you wouldn't necessarily have to just limit yourself to a product owner or Scrum Master role. You could still be an analyst in an Agile team. There's definitely still a role for that in some places, not everywhere, but it's definitely a need for that in lots of. I've done that in the past as one of my roles in the past as well, and a lot about the Agile ways of working and and kind of Scrum ways of working, etc., is about making sure you're having the right conversations between the right people at the right time, and a lot of it is is something that supports that. So I wouldn't say it's an easy transition, but it's definitely a transition that can be made depending on your level of knowledge and experience, and lots of shadowing people, lots of spending time with people in those roles, and getting advice on how to perform in those roles would be probably the first step on that journey.
Allan?
So let's be clear, they're two different roles, and I think BAs can fill both of them, but for different reasons. One is I've seen several BAs move into a kind of Scrum Master role, and good BAs are good at being a Scrum Master for two reasons. Firstly, both BAs and Scrum Masters need to talk to people, and BAs tend, if they're not good at it, they're not usually a pretty good BA. So they can turn their analysis skills and their people skills, their facilitation skills, which they've learned as a BA, and they are all useful as a Scrum Master. The difficult bit there is they've got to step away from saying, I think you should do this, because that's what business analysts tend to say, and then they need to really see the facilitation there. And BAs tend to be systems thinkers, which helps with Scrum Mastering. BA as a product owner, well, I think they're the same role. I think the got product owner, and a product owner is really quite a large role, and the skills you need to do product owner differ from place to place, depending on the thing you're working on, the type of team you're working on, etc., etc. And product owners absolutely need business analysis skills. It's something they should be doing, analyzing their business, analyzing their stories. So they need business analyst skills. And it's natural for BA to step up for it. A BA may find, depending on the situation, they don't have quite the same market-facing skills. You may want to pick up some product management skills to go with your BA skills. But there are some product owners where being a trained BA with experience of being a professional proxy is the perfect background to be a PO. So see the BA role as a type of PO rather than two very different roles.
Alex, I smell a debate somewhere, you know, so maybe we can take this. But no, on a more serious note, though, you know, honestly, totally agree. I totally agree. I think the product owner role encompasses both business analysis as well as organizational business planning as well.
Yeah.
You know, so that business analyst role focuses more on sort of the requirement engineering, whereas the PO role focuses on both requirement engineering as well as organizational
PO's a
product planning.
superset of the business analysis skills.
Spot on, yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone. Our questions have come to an end. Massive thank you to Anikh, Sage and Allan for 3 great talks this evening. Allan, really glad we sorted your technical difficulties out. But a real big thanks to you 3. The Agile community, it's great when we get people like you involved and you deliver talks such as you did this evening. And a massive thank you to everyone else joining us as well. You know, we are in challenging times, but it's great to keep the wheels spinning for everyone in the audience and everyone in the community. And we're really in a great position to be able to provide a platform to continue these. They are all recorded, these sessions. So within the next 24 hours or probably by midday tomorrow, it will be on our YouTube channel. So if you want to have a look, check them out. I will ask for the slides from the speakers. So just reach out to me on LinkedIn or I'll post them into the meetup group. My name's Alex Subhan. I'm not difficult to find. Thank you very much for everyone for joining. Next week, we're back same time. We've got Product London next Tuesday, Agile London next Wednesday. We've got Karim Harbert and John Spruce speaking next Wednesday at 6 o'clock. So another 2 pretty big names within the Agile community. So make sure you tune into those. But all that leaves me to say is thank you very much to everyone for joining. Thank you once again to our speakers and have a lovely evening. See you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Alex. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.